The angry backlash against low-traffic neighbourhoods and ultra-low emission zones is still rumbling on. It's prompted Rishi Sunak to row back on climate commitments he thinks will adversely affect drivers. Now MPs are calling on the Prime Minister to go even further. They're demanding that he delays his planned diesel and petrol ban and extends the fuel duty freeze. Joining me in the studio is Howard Cox, the founder of Fair Fuel UK, and with us down the line, Colin Walker, who's the transport lead at the Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit. Let's start with Colin, why not? Colin, tell me how you feel about the pressure on the Prime Minister to row back on all sorts of climate change commitments.
Well, you've mentioned recent election results, such as the by-election in Uxbridge, and to be quite honest, I think the reactions to the results has been overstated somewhat. For example, polling in London shows that over half of Londoners actually are supportive of the ultra-low emission zone, against 30% who oppose it. And I think that demonstrates the recognition of the importance it plays. I think one of the considerations that's often not mentioned whenever people talk about the resistance to the ULEZ zone is the reason why it's been introduced. It's been introduced because air pollution in London is very high. It contributes to 4,000 premature deaths of Londoners every year. And this is a measure that in inner London has had a pronounced effect on lowering air pollution levels. So I do think there's been a slight overreaction. I do think the polling suggests that there's broad public support for a lot of these schemes. So I think that's where we should take it.
All right, let's bring in Howard Cox, who was huffing and puffing throughout that, and who I believe is going to be a candidate for Mayor of London. You're going to be running in the race to become Mayor of London. And what's your ticket for running?
I'm running for Reform UK, but I'm running to actually get rid of all ULEZ, not just the extension, the whole of ULEZ. But I must pick up Colin's point about 4,000 deaths in London. This is a complete and utter lie. It's not happening whatsoever. One person has actually died, and that's on their death certificate, due to low emission or air quality per se. But the 4,000 Vanessa is a complete and utter based on a modelling aspect, being the operative word being premature deaths. And those premature deaths are around about 2 to 3 weeks in terms of a life expectancy.
So do you dispute, therefore, the poor quality of London air, and not just London, but all the conurbations around the country? Are you saying that the air is fresh and clean and you're happy for your asthmatic grandma to breathe it and a premature baby to breathe it, and it's absolutely pucker and just what you would want it to be? Is that why you want to get rid of ULEZ everywhere?
That's beautifully phrased, that fresh.
Thank you very much.
But I'm afraid, yes, London, for example, is now one of the top 25% of cleanest cities in the world.
Doesn't London consistently fail the European air quality regulations? We never do in London ever manage to pass the test, do we?
Well, I'm sorry, Vanessa. A lot of these stats are thrown around all over the place, but it's not true. One of the most dangerous places to go, of course, is the underground, where it's 1,800% worse than at roadside level, and yet Sadiq Khan is wanting to actually tax people at roadside level £12.50 just for coming in a perfectly good, clean car.
Let's bring Colin back into this. What about the state of air in not just London, but cities throughout the United Kingdom?
Well, certainly there's huge air quality problems in cities across the UK. London is particularly bad. 98% of schools in London, to where we send our kids, actually are in areas that exceed World Health Organization recommended levels for air quality. So that's the challenge. That's the challenge that someone like Sadiq Khan is actually faced with. What kind of measures can he introduce and actually bring those limits back down to a level that is safe, that isn't actually increasing levels of asthma, like stunted lung development in children in the city's capital? Those are the kind of policy decisions that those who kind of oppose ULEZ or oppose the extension of ULEZ need to kind of come back and say, well, what is your solutions to those problems? I mean, that 4,000 figure does come from peer-reviewed academic research. So if we're going to contest the figure, then it's difficult. But if those 4,000 figures are something that we're going to take seriously, then we need to understand what are the other measures that can be introduced to actually bring those deaths down.
Well, let's bring her back in. What would you suggest instead if you want to get rid of all ULEZ?
Well, I'm sorry, the quality of cars and what they emit have improved year by year by year. HGVs, for instance, big trucks in the last 10 years have halved their emissions. What we should allow is not to have draconian bans or hit people in the pocket. We should actually incentivise clean fuel technology. I like electric vehicles. I want clean air to breathe. But we don't need to do it by hitting people in the pocket.
The Sun is going very big on this at the moment. So the Sun front page, Sun Motorist manifesto, rush to net zero is too soon. Hard up drivers are clobbered. UK isn't ready. We say give us a break, spelt like the brake of a car. And there's much more than that on the inside of the paper. It goes on and on. Five-point manifesto, no ULEZ expansion in London or indeed nationwide. No LTNs, no low traffic neighbourhoods where the public objects. Delay on 2030 diesel and petrol car ban until the country's ready. Scrap edict that says 22% of car sales must be electric by 2024, and no new green motoring, stealth taxes and a fuel duty freeze. Did you write this for them, Howard?
I was involved with helping them. Yes, I was indeed. But they've done their own thing. And I've worked very closely for 13 years and we've stopped £200 billion worth of fuel duty rises in the last 13 years. The point is, Vanessa, we need to work together. We do not need to have this divisive approach. And I'm afraid it hits the motorists, it hits the poorest, it hits small income families or low income families. And it also hits sole traders like electricians. Those are the sort of people we hit. What we need to do is work together on clean fuel technology.
So we know about what happened in the Uxbridge by-election. Yep. I suppose there's still some argument about whether it really was ULEZ that pushed the victory towards the Tories. Although I think there's a general supposition that that was the crucial thing and the thing that most people voting really cared so much about. And then there's the question of what next, of whether there's any mileage, and you think there is in taking this view and seeing how appealing it is to voters.
Absolutely right. I mean, I have to say the Tories should have been smashed in Uxbridge, but they weren't because there's only one story in town. ULEZ. Everyone was against the ULEZ expansion. Even a lot of Labour voters, even a lot of Green people I've spoke to as well. That may surprise Colin. But fundamentally, what we need to do, and I repeat my request, let's work together to make this happen rather than hitting people in the pocket.
OK, let's bring Colin in on that perennial controversial subject of the LTN. I mean, I've been broadcasting about this, honestly, for what feels like infinity. And you get passion, equal passion and conviction on both sides, Colin. You get people saying it's been a wonderful, magnificent strategy that has now ushered in nirvana. The air is clear, the birds are tweeting, the traffic isn't congested, and everybody's living happily ever after, gazing upon these beauteous planters that are taking up road space. And you hear other people saying it's been the ruination of the entire neighbourhood. The horrible air spread not just this way, but that way to all the roads surrounding it. A guy who wants to come out of his drive, turn left and drive to the hospital, which is up the hill, now has to make a kind of 5-mile detour, spreading pollution everywhere he goes. I mean, people are very passionate on both sides. I better hear yours, Colin.
Oh, it's certainly a very passionate debate and caused quite a bit of division. I think there's a lot of kind of confusion about low traffic neighbourhoods, what they actually involve. This notion that kind of you are literally banned from driving. It's literally trying to discourage, and in many cases, people trying to drive through a quiet residential area as a means of getting from A to B, even if they don't necessarily live in that area. And it certainly does bring benefits. I mean, if you reduce traffic in an area, typically research shows that footfall in local businesses go up. So there's a boon there. But also it's generally something that is supported. Again, if you look at London, where we've been speaking, something like 58% of Londoners support the introduction of low traffic neighbourhoods, only 17% oppose. So whilst, yes, you're right, there is kind of division, I do think a lot of the opposition to it is from quite a vocal minority that actually doesn't reflect the fact that on the whole, significantly more people in London support their introduction than oppose it.
How, Cox, is that true?
Well, the statistics quoted, I keep hearing these sorts of things, but I'm reading a different set of statistics. People aren't very pro-low traffic neighbourhoods. You made it very eloquently. You put the fact that that traffic is diverted to another area and it's put into other areas. Most low traffic neighbourhoods are in rich, privileged areas as well. And I came over here by taxi, and the taxi driver told me, I said, what do you think of low traffic neighbourhoods? He said, do you know, look, my daughter's scared now to be dropped off because she has to walk so far, because before I used to drop her off in the car, etc. And it's become a dangerous situation. Those are the sorts of things that are happening. Low traffic neighbourhoods, all the polling I've read, people are against them. And the only people that like them, the people that live in them.
Or indeed the people who live in them and don't like them. I've heard from loads of those as well. There have been plenty of those. So anyway, always a controversial one. 03444 499 1000. I'm sure we'll hear and see much more of you as your mayoral candidacy takes flight. We'll see how you go, Howard. Thank you. Sure you'll come back in and talk about it. Colin, thanks very much indeed.